Would you be the jerk for calling your stepsister the ugly stepsister? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for installing a doorknob with a lock on my bedroom door after I got fed up with people barging in one too many times? I, 21-year-old male, am home for the summer from college. Much of my time I've been playing games with friends and hunting for achievements after being unable to do so thanks to previous workloads. But I'm also doing some studying in between, along with helping around the house when asked and looking for summer work. No matter how many times I make it abundantly clear, my family still won't respect my boundaries. One important one is my bedroom. Even though I've said that a closed door is a very visible boundary, my parents, younger brother, and older sister, when she comes to visit, often just turn open the doorknob and barge in to ask or tell me about some pretty mundane stuff most of the time. It's mildly understandable with a slightly ajar or fully open door, but it's summertime, and in the late evenings we let in some cool air. But if they knock and I don't respond because I have my AirPods in, then they just barge in anyway. My younger brother is the worst of the bunch. He oftentimes goes into my room to tell me a mundane story about what happened at high school with his friends. And it's tiring having to remind him for the billionth time that I simply am not interested. Sometimes when I was away at college, he would have gone into my room and used something like a notebook I was keeping for notes, or my cardioid mic for a therapy session without even asking me on the phone. He doesn't even put it back when he's done, and I'm tired of literally yelling at him to stay out of my room and not touch my crap, because I don't do that to him. A couple of days ago, my brother barged into my room to simply hand me a snack I didn't even ask for whilst I was playing my game, which I was trying out with some R18 plus mods. My door was closed and I didn't even realize he was there, and I again told him, "Don't randomly barge into my room, dang it." Then yesterday we had a family gathering, and my brother proceeded to freaking tell people about the mods I'd been using to try and embarrass me. I was pretty dang ticked, even though I made up a story on the spot about how I'd accidentally joined an R18 plus game. I also told my parents when they asked me about it, and when my brother insisted otherwise, I essentially had to gaslight him into thinking he massively misremembered things. After that, I've decided I've freaking had it. I hauled my butt to the bus, went to Lowe's, bought myself a doorknob lock, and swapped it out myself. Earlier today, I'd locked my door and later heard a jiggle and then some knocks. It was my brother, and I told him that thanks to him, I had no choice but to install a lock on my door, which he then told my parents about. Dad lectured me about how I don't modify his house without permission, to which I shot back that nobody modifies my privacy without permission, and simply put in my earbuds. Since then, Dad's blocked my devices from Wi-Fi until we discuss logistics of my door lock. And I've been using USB tethering since. Am I going insane here? I don't really understand why this war is one that your parents feel the need to fight. Honestly, I think every teenager deserves to have a lock on their door. They deserve to have privacy, because let's be real, no matter how pure of heart you raise your kids to be and believe they are, things will almost certainly happen, and they deserve to have some privacy, even beyond just things going on. In general, I'm a person that values their privacy greatly, and I think anybody deserves privacy. What about just like when they're done with a shower? They go back to their room, they can't lock their door, they're at the mercy of anybody just barging in? That kinda sucks. If it isn't allowing them to put a lock on the door, next they're gonna look for something heavy enough to just block it. Really up the fire hazard situation. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to drive when my nieces and nephew wouldn't put on their seatbelts and making them late for summer camp? I, 26-year-old male, recently drove my nieces and nephew, 10-year-old female, 8-year-old male, and 5-year-old female, to their summer day camp because my brother had a doctor's appointment and I was available. Now, I'm very strict about safety in my car, and I especially don't tolerate anyone not wearing their seatbelt properly, and that goes double for kids. That day, my nieces and nephew decided to be difficult and refused to buckle their seatbelts. I refused to start the car until they did, and in the end I had to video call my brother at the doctor's office waiting room and had him threaten to ground them. We were 15 minutes late for camp. After the fact, my brother told me that he was frustrated with me because I made them late for no reason. He told me that we rode around in the back of our parents' pickup truck all the time and turns out fine, this is true, and that it was a short drive, so it wouldn't have been a big deal. He said I had a stick up my butt and needed to lighten up a little, that I have no right to discipline his kids, and he just called me a bad guardian in general. He's probably right that nothing would have happened, but I feel like he's being too dramatic about 15 minutes of lateness. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP can possibly be the jerk for dying on this hill of, hey, I made sure your kids were properly strapped into my car before I started driving them here. If he wants to go, that's no reason, by all means, maybe you should ask the family and ask them, hey, if his kids aren't buckled properly in the back of my car, is that no problem? You know, find somebody that would actually make them feel ashamed for saying that it's no problem that their kids weren't strapped in. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my wife's dad he can't come to our wedding? I'm Gina, 32-year-old female, and at my engagement dinner, my wife Zoe, 34-year-old female, made a toast to new beginnings. Everyone happily clinked drinks except Zoe's father. He just sat there with his arms crossed, staring daggers at me. I looked at Zoe, but she was too busy talking to her brother. 20 minutes into the dinner, I overhear a conversation at the end of the table where we sat the older people like our parents and grandparents. I heard my mother say, "Excuse me?" Then I heard Zoe's father say, "It just isn't natural." I asked what was going on, and the whole end of the table got silent. Zoe's father said he was happy for us, but that he doesn't like that I'm a girl. I asked him what did he mean by that, and he told me our whole engagement was a joke. He actually started to look around for some type of backup. I laughed and told him if he felt that way to not come to the wedding. He got very upset and told me I can't tell him what to do and he's going to go anyways. I put my foot down and said, "No, you're not." For years, I had to sit and listen to him talk down on me and Zoe's relationship, but this time I wasn't letting it happen. But now I regret it because after the party, Zoe's mother told me that her family isn't attending because I told her husband he couldn't come. Now Zoe's extremely upset and has been crying since we got home. Am I the jerk for uninviting him? I don't think you're the jerk for not inviting somebody who is so intolerable to you and your existence. And if the rest of the family wants to pile onto that and say, yeah, you know what? Because you won't invite this homophobe, I'm not going either. It's probably for the best in that situation if they're feeling that way. This next story is, am I the jerk for taking a THC gummy at a Christian wedding? I, 26-year-old male, was the +1 for a wedding that my roomie, 27-year-old female, was in as a bridesmaid. I had previously met the couple, male and female, 28, a few times, and they seemed fine. I brought a pack of 5mg gummies that I would take during the reception, and my roomie knew I was bringing them. The wedding was small, about 60 people. I knew going in that not everyone was allowed +1s, but my roomie was, as she's in the bridal party. The ceremony was nice, and when we moved to the reception, I was seated with 3 bridesmaids and 2 of the bride's college friends, 20-year-old male and female couple. The wedding party left for pics and some food was brought out, so I took a gummy. I offered some to the couple people I was left with and they politely declined, and I thought that was the end of that. Some time passed and the wedding party returned. Right away, the couple engaged in hushed conversation with the bridesmaid sitting opposite me. I couldn't hear over the music. The couple's vibe changed, and while we were talking as a table, they would start responding to things I was saying with, "Oh, I wonder what other fun things you're taking," and "Don't let the kids here see you doing that," and snarky-ish tones. I became uncomfortable, so I excused myself and stepped out onto the patio. Soon after, my roomie stepped out and joined me. She informed me that the table started talking about me when I left, and the couple was appalled to find out that I brought gummies to the reception. They expressed their distaste for drugs that aren't FDA approved and are also apparently Christian, which became clear when they stated that this was a Christian wedding and I should be more respectful and not bringing addictive drugs around a celebration with kids present. My roomie thought they were overreacting, but the other bridesmaids agreed with them and debated kicking me out. I was embarrassed and didn't realize I would cause such a reaction, as they had an open bar and plenty of people were already buzzed, that couple included. We returned and I apologized and tried to explain that gummies are legal and not addictive like alcohol or other drugs. The man seemed to think that was a jab at him, as he was already pretty drunk. He interrupted me and said, "You don't get to tell others how much they can drink at a wedding, especially when you're a +1 and we were actually invited." The convo died and we were dismissed for dinner. I could hear that couple, a few people behind us in line for the buffet, still talking about it and including others in the convo. At that point, I felt unwelcome and told my roomie I was just going to wait in the car outside. She opposed that, but I told her I'd be fine and left. I stayed in the car for 3 hours. When my roomie finally came, she told me that when the bride heard about this, she didn't personally care, but said I absolutely shouldn't have brought edibles, as many of the attendees were Christians and equated weed to meth or cocaine. I mean, it varies depending on how you actually react to said edibles, but I think if you go to a wedding, you really shouldn't be a person going around saying, hey, you want some of these fun gummies? I just think in general a wedding isn't really the platform for that. Maybe like the bachelor or bachelorette party, but I feel like it's just a bit too much to go around asking anybody if they want edibles at a wedding. This next story is, am I the jerk for asking my friend if she's pregnant? My, male 25, friend, female 23, usually goes to the gym regularly and parties a lot. Lately, I've noticed that she stopped drinking entirely, same as smoking, and has stopped heavy lifting and going to the gym as regularly as she used to. On top of that, lately, she'll often excuse herself to go to the toilet, presumably to throw up, and I've noticed she got a bit thicker and watery. Don't get me wrong, I'm not jabbing her looks, it's just I've noticed. Her chest is also noticeably grown. When we were out the other week and I noticed she didn't even touch her Red Bull, I pulled her to the side to have a private conversation and asked her if she's pregnant. She immediately flipped out and denied it. Right after that, she went home and I covered for her when the group asked me why she went home. I texted her later that same night if I overstepped, and she simply replied, "You literally called me fat, jerk." I never did such a thing, but I simply let her be instead of arguing. Today, another friend told me she is indeed pregnant, and I don't know what to make of her reaction towards me when I asked her in a 4-eye conversation. Am I the jerk? Edit, for those curious, when I asked her, I verbatim said, I noticed you've been excusing yourself pretty often lately and are avoiding some things. Could it be that you're pregnant? Edit, well, this post was a waste of time, except you don't do that, which is most of the replies. There has been little actually useful feedback. Why don't you do that? Why is it not socially acceptable to ask a close friend a normal question in a private setting? It's none of your business. Like, if that's the energy, you could apply that to any question ever. It's a simple yes, no, or no comment thing. Are we in the 1950s still? Update, she messaged me and we met up during lunch break. She apologized for overreacting, and I apologized for if my question was intrusive. We came to the conclusion that my question wasn't intrusive and neither did she overreact. She told me she's 2 months pregnant and didn't think anyone had noticed. She was keeping it a secret, at least to the guy circle of our group, because she was afraid of being called a tramp. That's why she freaked out when I asked her, and it's also why she tried to deflect by saying I called her fat. I reassured her that nobody would think she's a tramp, especially not in our group. We're all very supportive and are looking forward to doing our best in helping her out the following months. I also showed her this post, and she had a good laugh at some of the way overboard "you're the jerk" comments, especially the one that called me a pervert. To be fair, she also said many of them put forward valid points, but that they in most cases rather concern strangers and not close friends you've shared big things with before though. So after all, I retract my second edit, and I'm actually happy with how this turned out, especially after receiving some more useful feedback from the point I made the second edit on. Some of y'all really got too butthurt over edit 2 though. So it goes without saying that you have to be very careful when you ask somebody if they're pregnant. My general rule of thumb would be, the classic like OP said, you don't do that. I mean, realistically, I guess I just think if they are pregnant, they're going to reach a point where they inform you. If you go to your friend and say, so has anything interesting been going on in your life? And they don't elaborate, they probably don't want to tell you yet. So it's really not a surprise that they freaked out when you're being so forward about it. This next story is, am I the jerk for having a baby shower and not inviting my pregnant ex? So my ex and I are currently expecting a baby and she's 26 weeks along. I am the last/only person in our friendship group and family in my generation and above who hasn't had a kid yet. So everyone's quite excited and they decided to throw me a baby shower just for bants. They told me they wanted to throw me one and asked if they should invite my ex. I said no because, well, no. We've agreed to co-parent, but we can and should keep some things separate, if not necessary, to include one another. And this was just with my friends and family. So they threw me this baby shower, and it was honestly quite some fun. It was all just jokes and bants. We had a great lunch, had some drinks, treats, and the gift giving. It was more of a celebratory party of me finally joining the parent club than anything. We took a bunch of funny parody-type pictures of typical baby shower photo shoots, like one with my stomach out and my friends were feeling the baby, and one of me under baby shower banners with all the balloons and gifts, etc. These were obviously posted, and my ex saw them and didn't like it, to say the least. She thinks I'm a jerk for having a baby shower, 1, at all because I refused to throw her one or help contribute, and 2, without her since I'm not the one pregnant, and apparently the photos were sexist and insulting. I get it, but also don't think it's that big of a deal. Am I the jerk? I'm really conflicted here because it's not a party that OP themselves threw. OP really had no part in organizing or running this thing, they kind of just showed up. But I do think there's kind of a weird air about it where this is a baby shower that excludes the person actually carrying the baby. It almost in a way, whether intentional or not, kind of insults or parodies or makes light of her and her situation with carrying the baby. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my daughter she shouldn't complain about being poor because she chose to be a teacher? My husband and I, both late 50s, have 3 lovely children. James, 34, Maggie, 33, and June, 32. My husband is a lawyer and I've been a paralegal since my last child graduated, so we make a good living. James is also a lawyer, same firm as his dad, and Maggie's now in law school after being a part-time paralegal while their 2 kids were young. Her husband is in engineering and does quite well. I'm not trying to brag, but we all do quite well and it is relevant to this posting. June is an elementary school teacher, and her husband manages a restaurant. They are both very hard workers, and I'm proud of June for doing well at a very hard and vastly underpaid job. However, she is always jealous and complaining about how hard she has it. She complained that we have a cabin in the Up, Michigan, and she's got a starter home that we gave her money for. She's complaining about her sister having nice clothes, her brother's house in the lake, her husband having loans for his masters, us having nice cars, you name it. She constantly complains. Every dang time she comes over, she says things like, "Must be nice to go on vacation, must be nice to get new furniture, etc." Last night she started again, complaining that she can't afford to go to the Up house and that it must be nice to be able to afford gas and still be able to wear fancy clothes. I snapped. I told her constant complaining was getting old. We gave her the same help with her college and grad school as her siblings, and she knew when she chose her career what the salary was. I told her I am very proud, but she knew what she was getting into, and this attitude makes her family not want her around. She was furious and left, screaming that her siblings are golden children and that she was just as good. I tried to tell her that wasn't true, but she wouldn't let me get a word in. She won't talk to me, but she called her sister, who was quite put out by the whole thing, but on my side. My husband, however, said I should have just let it go. And my mother was very upset and is acting like I did something terrible. So, am I the jerk? I just don't think OP's the jerk here. Like, yeah, it sucks that your entire family are all in much better financial situations than you are, but you can't just complain about it every time you see them and hope that, I don't know, they're gonna give you some kind of charity. As long as what OP's saying is true, they gave you the same foundation any of the other kids got. They gave them money for their house. It's not like they left them hung out to dry, and it's not like they're cutting them off either. The only reason they'd cut them off is that terrible attitude they have whenever they're around. This next story is, would I be the jerk if I told a lady on a plane to give in to her crying toddler's demands? I've been sitting on a flight for about 30 minutes now waiting to take off, and the toddler behind me is screaming on the top of his lungs, "Coco Melon," for at least 20 out of the 30 minutes, and I hear his mom say, "No Coco Melon, you need to learn to live without it." I understand not wanting to give in to your son's demands and teach him that he won't get what he wants if he screams loud enough, but this is an 8-hour flight. The Wi-Fi is literally $5 and it will shut him up. I offer to pay if she doesn't want to. Do I say something or keep my mouth shut? Edit, I have noise-canceling AirPods, but it's still not shutting him out. I have to play music at the max volume to begin to not hear him. I swear this kid has a microphone in his voice box. 15 minutes later and he's still screaming. The visibly annoyed flight attendant just offered them free Wi-Fi, and she's still not taking it. She is certain he will get tired and the crying will stop. It's been an hour. Kid's screaming has only gotten worse. He screamed, "I hate you. I wish I had a better mommy." Me too, kid, me too. Final update, hopefully. Over an hour and a half in, kid finally stopped crying. She finally gave in, accepted the free Wi-Fi, and he's quietly watching CoComelon on her phone. And I didn't have to say anything. Let's just hope she doesn't change her mind. I mean, I don't think OP's the jerk for saying, "Hey, could you do something to contain your kid here on this flight?" Even offering to pay for the Wi-Fi is a pretty generous thing. I mean, yeah, I don't think OP did anything out of line here. I do kind of sympathize with the mom though, because I hate the idea of a kid just watching CoComelon and having brain rot for days on end on a tablet or a phone. But certainly, I think if there was one time that it's probably okay, it's probably for the duration of a flight. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to host a birthday party because my nephew isn't allowed in my house? I, 24-year-old female, live on a 4-acre property that I bought for cheap from my grandma, who moved to a retirement community. My nephew is turning 16 at the end of the month. My sister asked if we could host his party here on the family property, meaning at my house. I told her no because my nephew isn't allowed at my house. My nephew doesn't respect boundaries and treats everything like his plaything, including the boundaries of my older black lab, Davos. He constantly chases him around and tries to pick him up, despite me telling him to constantly leave him alone. Davos has arthritis and can't be chased around and hates loud noises, which my nephew is very loud. As far as I know, he's neurotypical. My sister blew up at me, telling me I was putting a dog before my nephew and it was grandma's property that I can't dictate. I told her it was my property. I bought it and tended it and pay for all the bills for it. My mom called me and asked if I could just put Davos in a room during the party and suck it up for just a day, but I said no. This is his house and he's allowed to go wherever he wants, and I won't shut him in a room. Now my family's divided, some of them calling me immature and selfish, and others saying I'm right, while some, including my father, refuse to get involved. Am I the jerk? Edit to add, because I've gotten this question a couple times if the other members of the family were offered the house. My Nana and I have always had a very close relationship, and I've helped her tend to the property for as long as I can remember, so she offered to sell it to me when she grew too old to tend to it herself. So no, other family members weren't given the opportunity to buy it, but they also weren't interested in it. It's very old and outdated, and my sister especially always talked about how much she hated the aesthetic of the house. The sole reason she wants to host it here is because my house has the most space. It's not a sentimental space for her. Yeah, I don't think OP's the jerk here. It just sounds inconvenient, and it doesn't really sound like OP really wants that to go on there anyways. And yeah, it's definitely not fair to the dog. Our next story is, am I the jerk for throwing away my flatmate's flowers from her boyfriend? I, 25-year-old female, used to live in a 2-bed flat with my friend. She moved out last month and got her friend Ava to take over her tenancy. I work long hours and am barely at home, and even then it's to sleep mostly, and sometimes I go see my boyfriend. We share a bathroom, kitchen, and living space. I have to walk past the kitchen to get to my bedroom. Ava's boyfriend got her flowers Thursday and she put the bouquet in a vase on the kitchen counter. I have hay fever and the flowers make me sneeze and my eyes itch. When I saw Ava that same day, I asked her politely to put the flowers in her room as I have allergies. She said she was on her way out for a run and would do so by the time she got back. I went into the kitchen the Friday morning and saw the flowers were still there. I tried knocking on her door, and when she didn't answer, left her a text reminding her to move the flowers. After work on Friday, I went to my boyfriend's and stayed over for the weekend. We got into a fight and I left early Sunday morning instead of staying the whole weekend. I was in a bad mood when I got home, and when I saw the flowers still on the counter, I was even more irritated. I checked my messages and saw Ava had read my message but not responded. And I knew she was in the flat over the weekend as there were dishes in the sink. I binned her flowers and went to my room. Ava saw me come in today after work and called me the jerk for binning her flowers and wants me to reimburse her for the bouquet. She told our friend, ex-flatmate, who agrees with her. I feel justified as I was annoyed and I'd asked her twice, and it's my kitchen too. Yeah, considering OP has a legitimate allergy that is flaring them up, and they tried very politely multiple times to just ask them to relocate it to a place where it's not going to irritate them on the daily. I mean, more than once a day, you're often in the kitchen multiple times. At some point, yeah, enough is enough. Maybe not binning it, but like putting it outside the front door or taking it into her bedroom might have been nice, but really it's all the same. Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling my stepsister the ugly stepsister because she freaked out over a nickname? My, female 29, family jokingly refers to me as Princess or the Princess because I have a reputation for being opinionated and sensitive. This is mostly because of sensory issues, so certain noises or textures grate on me to an extent that I'll leave the room or avoid touching things. I'm also just a picky person, and I like things how I like them. So my stepdad started referring to me as the princess, like, "Don't open the car window, the princess will get upset." My stepbrothers and mom use it as well. It's a running family joke. Well meant, I've never been offended by it in the 15 years it's been a thing. My stepsister Georgia, female 30, hates it. She used to snap whenever anyone said it, but over the years, she just started making the odd passive-aggressive comment about it. Everyone ignores it because Georgia has a habit of thinking everything's about her. And if it's not about her, the reason it's not about her is because we all hate her, which is then still about her. So our whole family is visiting my parents in the countryside for a couple of weeks. Georgia has brought her boyfriend Jason along. I've met Jason a couple of times before at dinners, and he's a nice guy and he's fit in well. This morning, me and my mom were making breakfast, and Jason came down in to help out. We normally have breakfast in the kitchen/diner, so everyone started gathering at the table. We always make the tea and coffee last, so it's hot when we eat, and we all had the mugs out, and Jason offered to make the drinks. I told him not to do mine because I liked it made a very particular way, and he said, "Okay, princess, I'll just watch how you do it so I know for next time," and we laughed. It was a joke. The next thing we know, Georgia shouts she's sick of everyone calling me. She then swore at Jason for being just like them, us. She said, "Since everyone thinks I'm so special, what does that make her?" And I replied, "The ugly stepsister, obviously." No one said anything, but Georgia burst into tears, pushed her plate onto the floor, broke it, and went upstairs, and Jason ran after her. He's since come down to apologize for her. She hasn't come out of her room. My stepbrothers are on my side. The parents say I should have just not said anything and she would have calmed down, and that I went too far picking at an insecurity. That might be true, but I'm sick of her making everything about her. The joke doesn't have anything to do with her, and I am, as are my stepbrothers, sick of her acting out to force everyone to behave how she wants them to. Am I the jerk here for taking the argument there? I don't think OP's the jerk for responding and involving themselves in this argument. I just think the ugly stepsister is not the right return of fire. It's one thing for somebody to be jokingly called the princess, and I get it, you're trying to stick in the same theme with like Cinderella or whatever, but calling them the ugly stepsister is a jerk move. It just did not have to go to that level of name calling. Whether or not OP in the moment while they were heated realized how kind of nasty that title would be. I mean, they basically said, "I'm tired of you getting all this special princess treatment." And you turn around, called them ugly, and essentially gave them a title that probably makes them feel like the odd one out. Just was not the right choice of words. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not helping my brother financially? My brother, 30-year-old male, has never held a job longer than a few months. He's had 24 jobs in 12 years. He's quit several jobs for reasons such as not being able to take off for a party that weekend, going on a trip last minute, and generally thinking he's the best worker that ever existed. He left a 70,000 plus job because he worked shift work and it affected him going to parties and smoking weed. My parents have bailed him out in the past, but they stopped supporting him financially recently. He just left his current job because he thinks he should make more than his supervisor. This weekend, he came to my house asking if he could stay. He's been couch surfing, and if I'd help pay for his truck payment to avoid repossession. He said I could just work more overtime till he got on his feet. I flat out told him that I would not give him a dime. It got so heated, I had to threaten calling the cops to get him to leave. Now, friends and family are saying I went too far. Am I the jerk? Sadly, OP's definitely not the jerk here. Honestly, it's one of the saddest cases of mooching I've ever heard. The fact that this guy says, well, you can just work a little bit more overtime until I get back on my feet. I'm sorry, is OP just living your life for you? Just imagine being comfortable enough to tell somebody else, just work some more overtime till I get back on my feet. This guy was way too coddled or something. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.